Jeffrey Sullivan wasn't the type to overanalyze life's little curveballs. At 34, he was a wiry, perpetually unshaven tech startup founder in Seattle, with a decent beard and a talent for acting like everything was cool even when it was crumbling. His wife, Lauren Hayes, had been his college crush, stunning, quick-witted, and the kind of woman who could talk her way into or out of anything. For years, Jeffrey figured they were a solid team. He'd build his empire, she'd root for him, and they'd coast into the sunset in their tidy suburban split level. Things started simple enough. Back when Jeffrey was grinding 80-hour weeks to launch his consulting gig, Lauren was his MVP. She'd roll in at 2 a.m. with a Red Bull and a sarcastic, "Don't screw this up, champ. I'm counting on beach house vibes someday." She even paused her teaching gig to back his dream, as she put it, which Jeffrey thought was pure gold. In hindsight, he'd later wonder if that was the first whiff of something fishy, like catching a faint burnt smell before the toaster catches fire. A few years later, Jeffrey's business hit pay dirt. They traded their grungy apartment for a house with a deck they never used and a yard that mocked their lack of gardening skills. Lauren, meanwhile, dove headfirst into acting and public speaking classes, her new obsession. She was all about improv workshops, speech seminars, and posting dramatic monologues on Instagram. Jeffrey didn't bat an eye. He figured it kept her busy while he was out slaying dragons, one Excel sheet at a time. But around year 5, the vibe shifted. Lauren stopped asking about his day, a ritual that used to pair perfectly with their takeout dinners. Their once easy banter turned into something stiff and rehearsed, like she was reading lines from a bad script. Jeffrey would toss out a casual, "How'd improv go?" and she'd mutter, "Fine, same old," before disappearing into her phone. He brushed it off. Maybe she was just tired from all that emoting on demand. Then came the money grilling. Out of nowhere, Lauren started poking into the business. "How much did we pull in last month, babe?" she'd ask, hovering while he crunched numbers. "What's the company worth these days?" Jeffrey thought it was sweet at first, his wife finally caring about his world. But when he caught her snapping pics of his financial docs one night, claiming she was organizing, he wondered if her interest had a sharper edge, like a plot twist he hadn't seen coming. Her schedule went off the rails next. Suddenly, she had late rehearsals for acting class, weekend rhetoric retreats, and outfits that didn't add up. She'd leave in sweats and return in a sleek dress, waving it off with, "Oh, I spilled something." Jeffrey wasn't Sherlock, but even he could sense the script was flipping, like when your GPS glitches and you're already halfway to nowhere. One rainy night, after months of this slow-boil strangeness, Jeffrey was sprawled on the couch with a beer when Lauren sauntered in past midnight. Her hair was mussed, her lipstick smeared, and she carried a faint hint of some spicy cologne Jeffrey didn't own. "Rough rehearsal?" he asked, keeping it chill. She kicked off her shoes with a shrug. "Yeah. Class ran late, then we grabbed food. You know how it is." Except Jeffrey didn't know, because acting class used to end by 8, and that cologne wasn't part of any improv scene he'd ever heard of. He could have gone full drama queen right there, chucked the beer and demanded the real story, but Jeffrey wasn't built for showdowns. Instead, he nodded, sipped his drink, and let the tension hang. Something told him this wasn't the moment to pull the curtain back. Not yet. Little did Lauren know, she'd just handed him the opening act to a show that'd leave her smug little world in the cheap seats. Jeffrey Sullivan wasn't a paranoid guy by nature, but even he couldn't ignore the neon signs flashing trouble in his marriage. After that rainy night with Lauren's cologne cameo, he started paying attention, like a guy who finally notices the check engine light after months of pretending it's just a dashboard decoration. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, though. Maybe she really was just deep into her acting classes, perfecting some Oscar-worthy role that required late-night diners and mysterious scents. Yeah, and maybe pigs were lining up for flight school. The next few weeks turned Jeffrey into an accidental detective. He didn't go full CSI, no trench coat or magnifying glass, but he started clocking the little things. Lauren's rehearsals had a pattern. Tuesdays and Thursdays, always stretching past 10 p.m., sometimes midnight. She'd come home with that same faint cologne vibe, her excuses flimsier than a dollar store umbrella. "We workshopped a scene," she'd say, or "the group grabbed drinks to debrief." Jeffrey nodded along, but inside his brain was scribbling notes like a caffeinated intern. Then there was her phone. Lauren used to leave it lying around like an old magazine, unlocked, unbothered. Now? It was glued to her hand, or tucked in her purse with a passcode Jeffrey didn't know. One night, he casually asked, "New phone case?" just to see her reaction. She flinched, like full-on deer in headlights flinch, before muttering, "Yeah, got it cheap." Jeffrey didn't push, but the alarm bells in his head were starting to sound like a middle school fire drill. The real gut punch came when he checked their joint credit card statement. He wasn't snooping, not technically, just paying bills like a responsible adult. But there it was, charges for a hotel downtown, a fancy dinner for two at a spot they'd never been together, and a lingerie shop receipt that definitely wasn't for his birthday. Jeffrey stared at the screen, beer halfway to his mouth, thinking, okay, either she's planning a surprise bedroom improv scene, or I'm the world's dumbest husband. Spoiler, he wasn't holding his breath for a surprise. He decided to test the waters. One Thursday, he texted her around 1 p.m. "Hey, wrapping up early, wanna grab dinner?" Her reply came fast, almost too fast. "Can't, got a late rehearsal tonight, rain check?" Jeffrey didn't buy it. He left work anyway, drove across town, and parked near the community theater where her classes supposedly happened. By 2 p.m., Lauren's car rolled into a lot, not the theaters but some sketchy apartment complex a mile away. 10 minutes later, a guy pulled up, tall, gym rat type with a man bun that screamed, "I peaked in college." They walked in together, all giggles and handsy, like a rom-com Jeffrey hadn't auditioned for. Sitting in his Honda, Jeffrey felt his stomach churn. He snapped a few pics with his phone, blurry but clear enough to see Lauren's arm looped through man buns. Part of him wanted to storm up there, kick the door down and yell, "Cut! Scene's over!" But Jeffrey wasn't that guy. Rage was loud and messy. He wanted something quieter, something that'd hit harder. So he waited. 2 hours later, they came out, Lauren fixing her hair, man bun smirking like he'd just nailed a soliloquy. Jeffrey got more pics, including a solid shot of them locking lips in the parking lot. Oscar-worthy performance, babe, he thought bitterly. Back home, he didn't confront her. Not yet. Lauren waltzed in at 11:30 p.m., humming some tune like she'd had the best night ever. "Good class?" Jeffrey asked, keeping his tone flat. "Oh yeah," she said, not looking up from her phone. "We nailed this improv bit, super intense." Jeffrey almost laughed. Intense, huh? He let her ramble about fictional scene partners while he sipped his beer, plotting his next move. Confrontation wasn't the play, not when she thought she was still the director of this little drama. The guy's name turned out to be Tyler. Jeffrey found it in 10 through Lauren's phone when she left it unlocked one night. Pro tip, never underestimate a scorned husband's resourcefulness. Tyler was some adjunct instructor from her rhetoric course, all charisma and tight shirts, the kind of dude who probably quoted Shakespeare to impress women. Jeffrey dug deeper, screenshots of flirty texts, more hotel receipts from her purse, even a voice memo of her telling Tyler, "Jeff's too buried in work to notice. I'll file soon and we'll be set." She wasn't just cheating, she was scripting her exit, planning to cash out with alimony while Jeffrey footed the bill for her new life. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a heist. That's when Jeffrey decided Lauren wasn't walking away with the spotlight. He'd rewrite the ending. Over the next few weeks he got crafty, met with his accountant after hours, made some business moves, prepaid his office lease, funneled cash into equipment, kept his personal income lean on paper. Nothing shady, just smart. Meanwhile, Lauren kept rehearsing her role as the perfect wife, oblivious to the plot twist brewing. Jeffrey Sullivan had always prided himself on keeping cool under pressure, like a guy who could grill burgers while the backyard caught fire and still crack a joke about it. But by now, with Lauren's double life laid out in blurry photos and credit card receipts, his chill was wearing thin. He'd spent weeks playing the oblivious husband, nodding along to her tales of late rehearsals while quietly building his case. Tyler the Man Bunn was her co-star, and Jeffrey had the evidence to prove it. Texts, pics, even a hotel keycard she'd stashed in her purse like a prop from a bad play. He wasn't ready to tip his hand, though. Not yet. Lauren, meanwhile, was getting cocky. She'd breeze in from her classes with that smug little grin, like she'd just aced an audition and knew the Oscar was hers. Jeffrey kept up the act, asking, "How's the rhetoric stuff going?" Over takeout. Watching her spin lies about group projects and imaginary scene partners. She'd ramble on, oblivious to the fact that he'd seen her locking lips with Tyler in a parking lot. It was almost funny, like watching a bad improv skit where the actors don't realize the audience is onto them. Then, one random Tuesday, she decided to drop the curtain. Jeffrey got home from the office, tired but wired, and found Lauren perched on their couch like she'd rehearsed the scene 100 times. Her arms were crossed, her lips curled into a smirk that screamed, "I've got you now." "Jeff, we need to talk," she said, her voice dripping with fake syrup. Jeffrey raised an eyebrow, leaning against the counter with a beer he suddenly wished was something stronger. "Sure. What's up?" She paused for dramatic effect, like she'd learned it in class, then hit him with it. "I'm pregnant." Jeffrey blinked, his brain doing a quick rewind. They hadn't been together like that in months, maybe longer. Unless this was some miracle of modern science, the math wasn't mathing. Before he could open his mouth, she twisted the knife. "It's not yours. I've been seeing someone else and I want a divorce." The room went quiet, save for the hum of the fridge. Jeffrey's first instinct was to laugh, because really, who says that like they're ordering a latte? But the rage was there too, bubbling under his skin like a pot about to boil over. 5 years of marriage, and she was tossing it like a script she'd outgrown. He could have flipped the table, screamed, demanded to know how long she'd been rehearsing this betrayal with Tyler. Instead, he locked eyes with her and let a slow, lazy grin spread across his face. "Oh, wow, okay." Lauren blinked, thrown off script. She'd clearly expected him to melt down, tears, yelling, maybe a dramatic exit. Not this. "What do you mean, okay?" she snapped, her smirk faltering. Jeffrey shrugged, taking a sip of his beer like they were discussing weekend plans. "Just, okay, you're pregnant, not mine. Divorce." "Got it." Her jaw tightened, and she doubled down, leaning forward like she was about to deliver her big monologue. "And just so you know, you'll be paying me alimony. I gave up my career for you, Jeff. You owe me a cushy exit." That's when it clicked for Jeffrey. This wasn't just a breakup. It was her grand finale, her plan to cash out and ride off with Tyler on his dime. He'd seen the texts. "He won't see it coming," she'd told her lover boy. "Once I file, we're golden." She thought she had him cornered, checkmated, ready to fork over half his life's work while she played house with Man Bun. But Jeffrey wasn't about to let her steal the show. He set the beer down, leaned back, and locked eyes with her again. "Lauren," he said, his voice calm as a summer lake. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure out about Tyler?" Her face went white, like someone had yelled, "Cut," mid-scene. "Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? That apartment complex off 5th? Same parking spot every time. You didn't even try to switch it up." She stammered, I don't know what you're talking about." But the panic in her eyes said otherwise. Jeffrey chuckled, stretching his arms along the back of the couch like he was settling in for a good movie. "Come on, Laure. Rehearsals run late, huh? Must be one hell of a script if it needs hotel rooms and that cologne you keep bringing home. And Tyler, real catch, that guy. What's he teach again? Rhetoric? Bet he's got some killer lines for this mess." Lauren sat up straighter, her improv skills failing her now. "How long have you known?" she demanded, voice shaky. "Long enough," Jeffrey said, tilting his head. "You and your leading man were waiting for the perfect moment, right? Figured you'd blindside me, grab the alimony, and strut off stage together. He won't see it coming, you said. Cute." Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish flopping on the deck. Jeffrey didn't let up. "Here's the thing, though. You're not walking out of this with a standing ovation, not even close." Lauren tried to rally, masking the fear with a shaky bravado. It's the law, Jeff. You can fight it all you want, but I'll win. You'll pay. Jeffrey just smiled, the smuggest, most infuriating smile he could muster. If you say so, he said, and left it at that. She stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but he didn't give her one. Jeffrey Sullivan wasn't about to let Lauren's bombshell, "I'm pregnant, it's not yours, pay me," steal his spotlight. After she dropped that line like a seasoned actress delivering her big scene, she packed a bag and strutted out, smug as ever, assuming she just directed the perfect exit. She shacked up with Tyler the Man Bun faster than you can say rehearsal's over, filing for divorce the next week with a laundry list of demands. Alimony, half the house, and a chunk of Jeffrey's business. She thought she'd written the script for her victory lap. Jeffrey, though, he was just getting warmed up. For the next few days, he played the part of the dutiful ex to perfection. Paid the first alimony check on time, sent a polite email, funds transferred, confirm receipt, and kept his tone so neutral you'd think he was scheduling a dentist appointment. Lauren probably expected him to sulk, rage, or at least drunk dial her begging for answers. Instead, he gave her radio silence and a smiley face emoji in his last text. It drove her nuts. She even called once, fishing with a snippy, "You're awfully quiet, Jeff." He just said, "Busy week," and hung up. Let her stew. Behind the scenes, Jeffrey was busy. He'd already met with his accountant weeks ago, shuffling money around, prepaying leases, buying gear, keeping his personal income leaner than a vegan's fridge. Now it was lawyer time. He found a guy named Paul, a no-nonsense type with a handshake like a vice grip. Paul didn't sugarcoat it. "Washington's a no-fault state, man. Her cheating, the kid, court won't care. You're still on the hook for something." Jeffrey nodded, sipping his coffee. "Figured, but I've made some business moves. How's it look?" Paul skimmed the financials, one eyebrow creeping up. Well, convenient timing on these expenses. Doesn't hide assets, smart, but it sure makes you look less flush than you are. Might knock her payout down a bit." Jeffrey grinned. "Good enough for now." He wasn't dodging the law, just playing it like a fiddle. Lauren's lawyer would see a guy scraping by, not the cash he'd stashed in untouchable corners of his business. But Jeffrey wasn't stopping at money. Lauren's real weakness? Her precious acting world. She'd built herself up as this rising star, posting rehearsal selfies, name-dropping instructors, schmoozing at every workshop like she was Seattle's next Meryl Streep. Jeffrey knew that crowd loved a good story and hated a hypocrite, so he got to work. He'd collected everything, pics of her and Tyler mid-makeout, texts about her alimony scheme, "He'll pay, we'll play," hotel receipts, even that voice memo where she laughed about milking Jeff dry. He packaged it all in a neat little PDF, titled it Lauren Hayes, The Real Performance, and fired it off anonymously to the head of her acting program, a few key instructors, and the organizers of her rhetoric retreats. The email was pure gold, polite, professional with a twist of shade. "Thought you'd want to know about a student's offstage behavior. She's been living off her husband's dime while preaching independence and chasing other interests. Evidence attached. Regards, a concerned observer." No threats, no ranting, just the facts, served cold. Jeffrey hit send, leaned back in his chair, and pictured the fallout. Lauren's whole persona, fearless artist, empowered woman, was about to take a nosedive. Court day rolled around a week later. Jeffrey showed up in his best suit, looking calm as a cucumber, while Lauren waltzed in with her lawyer, dressed in a modest blazer like she was auditioning for Innocent Wife the Musical. Her smirk said it all. She thought she'd already won. Her lawyer laid it on thick. Mrs. Hayes sacrificed her career to support Mr. Sullivan's ambitions. She deserves compensation for her contributions. Jeffrey's lawyer countered with the evidence. Tyler, the affair, the pregnancy, but the judge just yawned. "No fault state," he droned. "Misconduct's irrelevant. Let's talk numbers." Jeffrey's financial moves paid off. Sort of. The judge pegged alimony at $4,000 a month for 4 years, down from the $6,000 Lauren's team had pushed for. Not a clean win, but a dent. As they left the courtroom, Lauren couldn't resist a parting shot, whispering, "Told you I'd get mine." She dialed Tyler right there, giggling, "Babe, we did it. He's paying." Jeffrey said nothing, just watched her strut off, clueless about the storm he'd unleashed. That night, he cracked a beer and waited. The acting world's gossip mill didn't disappoint. By morning, his inbox had a forwarded email from a buddy in the theater scene. "Dude, Lauren's toast. Program director just canned her, said she's not aligned with our values." Everyone's buzzing. Jeffrey smirked. Let her think she'd won the money game. The real prize, her precious reputation, was about to slip through her manicured fingers like sand. Lauren Hayes didn't see the curtain falling until it smacked her square in the face. Jeffrey's little email stunt hit the acting world like a rogue spotlight, and the fallout was instant. The head of her program called her in, stone-faced, and dropped the hammer. "Your behavior doesn't align with our values. Consider yourself out." Her rhetoric retreats followed suit, politely uninviting her from future gigs. Word spread fast. By week's end, her Instagram was a ghost town, her posts buried under whispers of hypocrisy. Turns out, preaching independence while plotting an alimony grab didn't win her any fans in the artsy crowd. Tyler, her man-bun muse, didn't stick around for the encore. The guy who'd whispered sweet nothings about their future freaked out the second the drama got real. "I didn't sign up for this mess," he told her, packing his gym bag and bolting from their shared apartment. Pregnant and freshly dumped, Lauren was left holding a script no one wanted to produce. She spent a few nights crashing on a friend's couch, but even that dried up. Turns out her pals weren't keen on housing a walking soap opera. Desperate, she showed up at Jeffrey's door one rainy evening, looking like a drowned cat in a wrinkled hoodie. "Jeff, please," she said, voice cracking as she clutched her purse. "I messed up. I'm sorry. I just need a place to figure things out." Jeffrey leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, staring at her like she was auditioning for a role he'd already cast someone else for. "You're kidding, right?" he said, voice flat. "You burned that bridge, torched the ashes, and danced on the rubble. This isn't your home anymore." Her eyes welled up. Big, dramatic tears she'd probably practiced in class. "I've got nowhere to go. Tyler's gone. My friends won't call me back." Jeffrey cut her off with a shrug. "Sounds like a you problem, Laure. Figure it out." He shut the door, leaving her sniffling on the porch, and didn't look back. Sympathy? He'd run out of that months ago. Meanwhile, Jeffrey's lawyer, Paul, was working some magic. "New evidence," Paul told the court, sliding over updated financials that made Jeffrey look like he was barely scraping by. More clever bookkeeping, all legal, all airtight. Lauren's team squawked, but the judge, bored of the saga, slashed her alimony from $4,000 to $2,500 a month. She stormed out of the hearing, fuming, still clueless about the cash Jeffrey had squirreled away in his business. It wasn't a total win, but it stung her where it hurt, her wallet. A week later, Jeffrey decided to end the show for good. He called her up, voice casual as if he were ordering pizza. "Hey, Laure, I'm tired of cutting these checks. Business is tanking, Laure. Too many expenses here, so I'm thinking of shifting it overseas, maybe Thailand or something, to cut costs. International alimony's a total headache, though, so here's an offer. $60,000, one lump sum, and we're square. Sign the papers, and it's yours today. No mess, no fuss." It was a fraction of the $120,000 she'd have gotten over 4 years, but to a single pregnant woman, it sounded like a lifeline. She hesitated, voice shaky. "My lawyer said—" Jeffrey snorted. "Your lawyer's not sleeping on someone's futon. Take it or leave it. Offer's gone in 24 hours. Silence stretched, then she caved. "Fine, I'll sign." The next morning, she showed up at Paul's office, eyes sunken, hair a mess, and scribbled her name on the dotted line. Jeffrey handed over the cashier's check, smirked and said, "Enjoy the encore." She grabbed it and bolted without a word. Lauren burned through the $60,000 in 6 months. Rent, debt, takeout, and a few sad attempts to reinvent herself with new headshots. Her acting dreams fizzled. Blacklisted from the scene, She ended up slinging coffee at a strip mall cafe, pregnant and alone. Jeffrey, though? He was living the sequel he'd always deserved. His business boomed. New clients, bigger contracts, the works. A year later, he met Samantha, a no-BS graphic designer with a laugh that could light up a room and a work ethic to match his. She didn't play games, didn't care about his bank account, and could roast him over breakfast without blinking. They moved in together 6 months in. No rush for rings, just a solid vibe Jeffrey hadn't felt in years. One day, pumping gas in his new Jeep, he spotted Lauren across the lot, haggard, wrestling a beat-up sedan. She saw him, froze, then shuffled over. "Hey, Jeff," she mumbled. "How's it going?" He shrugged, capping his tank. "Business is great. Life's better. You?" She stared at her scuffed sneakers. "Money's gone. Rent's tough. Yeah." Jeffrey nodded, not a shred of pity in him. "Well, good luck with that." He slid into his car as she whispered, "I'm sorry, you know." He paused, glanced at her and smirked. "Too late for apologies, Laure. Enjoy the rewrite." He drove off, windows down, radio up, and didn't glance back. Jeffrey was free, thriving, and living his best life, with just a hint of sass for the ex who'd tried to steal the stage. Curtain closed. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. I wish you a great mood and good luck.